We're gonna be live in a minute. We're live on DPTV too.
Yeah, Jacob, just
go ahead, Rima. We're live.
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Rima Meraway, and I am the director of the National Network for Arab American Communities, a national institution of Access, which is the nation's largest Arab American community nonprofit. I also lead the policy and advocacy work for Access. On behalf of Access, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Preparing for a major election is always something that we at Access spend years in advance thoughtfully planning and preparing for. However, nothing could have prepared us for the challenges that 2020 has thrown our way. As our nation continues to grapple with and navigate these difficult and unprecedented times, we have realized now more than ever that our voices play a critical and necessary role in shaping the future that is safe, healthy, just, and equitable for each and every single one of us. In fact, we believe our voices are the most critical component of shaping our nation and our future. This reimagination of a safe, inclusive, and just future for our communities are deserving of brings us the theme for today's event: your voice, your vote, and our future. This future absolutely cannot exist without you and your voice. So I'd like to thank us all again for taking the time taking out your time out of your day to listen today, to learn and to engage with us. Before we begin, I just have a few items I would like to cover. First and foremost, as we always do, we'd like to begin with our land statement. I would like to take the time to acknowledge that Access and its three national institutions, the Arab American National Museum, the Center for Arab American Philanthropy, and the National Network for Arab American Communities, sit on Anishinaabe land and reside within the region with the highest concentration of Arab Americans in the nation. We also acknowledge our neighboring city, Detroit, as Anishinaabe territory and other indigenous peoples' land, as being the largest majority Black city in the nation with a long legacy of African diasporic contributions. Together, we also honor the indigenous and diasporic communities from wherever you may be tuning in from today. I would also like to take the time to thank our incredible partners who have worked tirelessly alongside us to bring this discussion to our communities today. So a special thanks to 482 Forward, ABISA, Brightmore Alliance, Congress of Communities, Detroit Action, Detroit Heals Detroit, Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation, Detroit Public Television, Developing Kings of Different Stages, My Student Dream, Total Life Christian Ministries, and Urban Neighborhood Initiatives. This event would not be possible without all of you, so thank you for your support and for working with us. We'd also like to take the time to thank our brilliant and talented youth speakers who will be joining us today, including Layla Nasher, Brandon Snyder, and Esther Guerrero. Finally, I'd like to thank the amazing communications team at Access, Linda, Jacob, and Jasmine, for all the behind-scenes work, and my colleague at Access who leads much of the voter engagement work, Isra DeRacy. And last but certainly not least, Access and all of our partners would like to express our sincerest gratitude to the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, and Attorney General Dana Nessel for taking the time out of their incredibly busy schedules to continue prioritizing the needs of our communities and join us for such an important and timely discussion. As a final note, I would like to remind all our speakers to speak slowly to make it easier for the translators to do their job today. I would like to now turn to my esteemed co-moderator, Pastor Larry Simmons.
Thank you, Rima. My name is Larry Simmons. I pastor Baber Memorial African Methodist Episcopal Church in Brightmore. I'm also the executive director of the Brightmore Alliance and one of the founding members of 482 Forward. I'm thrilled to be here today. You know, our work and community is rooted in fighting for justice with all the tools that we have, from organizing in the street to voting at the polls. Today, we're excited to have this critical conversation 34 days from our election on November the 3rd. Before we jump into the program, though, I'd like to make sure we give everybody a chance to get comfortable to see if they would like to use or need our translation. So I will introduce our translators so they will be able to tell people how to get connected to the translation. First, I have Abulai Ba. Abulai, can you tell folks how to get connected to the French translation line? You're on mute, Abulai.
Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue dans cette discussion sur nos droits de vote et ce que vous devez savoir avant de voter le jour de l'élection. La secrétaire d'État Jocelyn Benson et la procureure générale Nessel répondront à vos questions et discuteront les mythes sur le vote. Pour me rejoindre, la ligne française est 313 710 87 68. Encore, c'est 313 710 87 68. Merci.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next, we have Christina. Christina, can you tell our folks who are joined in today how they can connect to the Spanish translation line?
Sí, buenos días. Good morning to all. If you need Spanish translation, please call 313-626-7440 for translation. Si necesitas traducción en español, habla al 313-626-7440. Hoy la señora Gloria Rosas y su servidora Cristina Ruiz Mazón haremos la traducción. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And last, we have Peter Chuna. Peter is going to tell folks how they can get connected to our Arabic translation line before we move to our ASL interpreters. Peter.
ألو صباح الخير، أنا اسمي بيتر تشونا، أنا مترجم اللغة العربية معكم. بإمكانكم الاستماع إلى الترجمة العربية إلى هذا المؤتمر عن طريق الاتصال بالرقم 313-241-7030. الرقم باللغة الإنجليزية 313-241-7030. شكرا. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Peter. And we finally have ASL translators, our American Sign Language translators. There will be two of them today, Katie and Jennifer. Katie, would you let the folks know, let them see you? Thank you so much. Is Jennifer here with us? Okay, so it's now time to turn to one of my favorite topics in all the world. We're hearing somebody's background noise. So please mute if you're not on camera. As you have heard me often say, I am a 73-year-old man. And one of the things that you learn as you pass through life is how important it is to train up young people and to encourage them. And so this group of young people we have today who have taken the lead in activism for justice, we want to know what it is we can help them do, how we can line up behind their leadership, stand next to them and with them. And so we have three young people who are joining us today. They are Brandon Snyder, who's the director of Detroit Action. We have Layla Nasser, youth leader with 482 Forward and Access, and Esther Guerrero, youth leader with Congress of Communities. I'm going to ask each of them to take 5 minutes, and at the conclusion of their presentation, we're going to welcome our other special guests back, and Rima will join you. Brandon, you're up.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Simmons. My name is Brandon Snyder. What up, though, folks? I'm the executive director of Detroit Action. We're a grassroots, member-led, community-based group on the in the city of Detroit, building political power and fighting for racial and economic justice. I'm probably the least young of the young people, but I feel that I for the 18 to 35s, I still have an obligation to talk about why it's important for our community to go out and vote, and why it's important to engage in this process at all. For most of us, we're being bombarded right now with text messages, letters, emails, phone calls, commercials, etc., about the two candidates, about the top of the ticket. But elections are just one tool in the toolbox of civic engagement and social justice. And the top of the ticket, the presidency, is just one race. There are so many more things that are on the ballot, and there are so many ways to make sure that our voices are heard. When we think about the election and we think about elections in general, they are about ensuring that our voices are heard and that our values are expressed in public life. For quite simply, they're ensuring that we are able to put action towards the world that we want to see. When we think about those who are in power, this is an opportunity for us to, as people and as community groups, to ensure that they're hearing from us and either hearing our displeasure, or they're hearing from us and they're hearing what, the fact that how we want them to continue and go forward. So as an organization, Detroit Action, that works with low income, no income, and working class Detroiters, for us, we're displeased. We aren't happy with the way things are going, just as I imagine other Detroiters who are watching this are as well. And there are a number of things that we can do this year, and there are a number of things that we can make sure that we can do in these next 34 days to voice our displeasure and to take action. So the first step that we can do is registering your friends, your family, and your neighbors to vote. Why? Because when we vote, when we're able to, to exercise that power of voting, we're able to show that we're a powerful community, a powerful bloc, and that our decisions matter, that our voices matter. Quite simply, for some folks, this is the only time that they'll come around and listen to us or come around and hear from us. And we want them to know that A, that's not right, and B, that our communities matter year round. That second part of that ask, that our communities matter year round, means getting involved with the community group. There are tons of community groups that are on here today, like Access, like 482 Forward, like Detroit Action, like the Brightmoor Community Alliance, that you can join and be a part of, that aren't just talking about the election, that they're talking about the issues that may matter to you every day, like housing, like jobs, like criminal justice reform, like public education. And these are ways for you to not only express your interest and your desire for change on those issues in the election, but express your desire for change outside of the election, during the other 364 days. And then finally, I'll just let folks know that, there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation going around when we look online and we look at social media. When people are telling us who can vote and who can't vote, and the facts are simple. If you have a felony in your background, if you've been to prison, you can still vote. The only people in the state of Michigan who can't vote are those currently serving a sentence in the MDOC or in a county jail. So if you're waiting to be sentenced, if you got a family or friend that's waiting to be sentenced, if you got a if you've been to prison, if you're released on probation or parole, you can still vote. And why I'm bringing this up is that your vote is extremely important, because the people who make decisions and who make the policies that impact your lives are up on the ballot. So this is the opportunity that we have to ensure that those folks can get a job review, and sometimes can be fired from that job. So I'm gonna thank y'all for my time. I'm gonna pass it back to Reverend Larry and hear from other folks about why it's important.
Fantastic, thank you. Great points. Esther Guerrero, can you please join in with us and offer us your perspective?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Esther Guerrero. I'm from Southwest Detroit. I grew up here my whole life. I went to high school here. So Southwest Detroit is really close to my heart. Um, as we can see, the voter turnout is slowly going up to, my age group. I'm in my 20s. So it's really important that we continue and, like get on this momentum, especially in our community. I think it's important that we all go out to vote, especially the people in Southwest Detroit, because our voices matter and there are a lot of us and it's like a growing population. And I feel like this is a way that's really good to get involved civically. So civic engagement is always this topic that's being discussed continuously, and a lot of people are not knowledgeable on what civic engagement means. It's still kind of hard to understand what civic engagement means, but I always say that this is one of the easiest ways to be civically engaged. Just exercise your right to vote, because essentially this is deciding what our communities are going to look like, what is going to happen to our people, what's going to happen to our communities in every election, not only this presidential one. So ever since I got the chance to vote at turning 18, I registered right away. I registered on my college campus. There are people who walk around and just ask you to register your vote. It takes like 5 minutes. So obviously we don't have that opportunity of registering in person as much as we did before, but there are so many resources online that you can look up just to vote, just to register. So that would be the first step to take, to register to vote. And then also then going to the polls or voting by mail, looking up what are the instructions for that. There are so many resources online and on social media as well. A lot of people are promoting it. So if you don't know how to do that, just go on social media or go online and look it up. It's so simple. You can also vote in person. So if that's a thing that you want to do, just make sure that you're following all the CDC guidelines in respect to the pandemic that's going on. And then you can also request an absentee ballot. So you will get it by mail, and you can mail your ballot. So also know that you do have that option, not only that you can go in person. And you can submit your absentee ballot by November 2nd. So don't forget that as well. And there are, like Brandon mentioned, that there are so many confusions and ways that people get caught up in when it comes to voting. So please make sure that you're on top of the information that's being spread and that you don't get caught up in any of the the misinformation that's being spread as well. So there are people everywhere that are trying to get this election out to the young people, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to be creating these spaces, the future. And the future laws in place, it's going to be our generation at the end of the day. So this election is really important if we want our voices to be heard in the future. So it's really important for our young people to get out and vote. I work a lot with young people in high school. So it's also for us to vote for them, for the future of our kids in middle school, our kids in high school, because a lot of them wish they could vote in this election, but obviously because of the age. But other than that, I just would like to encourage all the young people. I'm a young Latina woman. I didn't know much about voting until I got to college. So it's definitely a thing that we have to educate ourselves on constantly if no one else is going to help us in that aspect. So definitely, if y'all have any questions in regards to voting, I work with Congress of Communities. So if y'all have any questions, definitely reach out to me there. And that's all I have for today. Just go out and vote.
I want to thank you so much for representing the Hispanic community today and young people. As we come now, I want to raise this question with the two of you. As you work with your contemporaries who are young, Arab young youth, Hispanic youth, white youth, African American youth, is there a venue, is there a way that everybody can come together to work in coordination on getting young people out to vote? Brandon?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and so I'll say, like, right now, this venue that we're on is like one of the best ways to do it. So, Detroit Action, the organization that I lead, and 482 Forward, the organization that I know Reverend Simmons is a leader at, and that I know Access is a member of. Every Friday until Election Day, we're going to be holding a Get Out the Vote event right across the street from the Department of Elections called Freaking Vote Friday. So freaking vote. So we're going to try and get folks out with music and fun and food, and try to make the process and this whole moment not seem so boring and not seem so complicated. So we want to be able to and that's not just for young people, for first-time voters, but for people like myself who this is, I've voted in other elections as well. So we want to make sure that we're doing this as a community, that we're doing this as friends and as really as a family, that we're showing folks how to vote, why to vote, and making this process of civic engagement, as Esther said, something fun, something that's just not mundane, and something that's just not just left up to the parties, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, but that's back in the hands of people.
I got you. Esther, did you have anything you wanted to respond or add?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that a way to get in the loop of voting, aware that this is happening. I think my generation has really taken to social media and really utilized this, social media in general, just to get so much information in general out. So that's definitely a way that I've been, utilizing my platform to educate the people who, look at the stuff that I post, to educate them on, when the dates are, when the deadlines are, and just how simple it is to register to vote. Because some people really don't, know that it takes like 5 minutes. I didn't know that before I found someone on campus. I thought it was going to take me a good 30 minutes, but I just had to fill out a form and I'm set. And it's even easier now that it's online. Yeah. So, there's this misconception, especially for young people, that it's so hard to get out to vote. It's so hard to fill out the application. Like, they ask for so much information. And a lot of the times that's like kind of like stigma as well, like giving your information out into like the internet or to like a random person. But, we have to get past that, and we have to realize that, it's our time to, really get out and represent the groups that we're representing and the communities that we're representing. And that is as simple as casting a ballot, putting in your vote. And that will really show at the end of the election, the groups that we're part of, the people who we're representing in the data. The data shows that millennials and Gen Z, we're going up, it's the age group that it's going up in votes. So we'll definitely hopefully see that that line increase, and just getting this, I guess, social media, using that to prove that we are, we're here and our votes matter, and showing how it could be easier.
And we have joining us now an Arab youth, Wally. Are you online, Wally? I see your picture. I don't see your smiling face.
Hello. Sorry,
hey.
I was just in my class. I had to excuse it, but hey.
So you've got 3 minutes because we're just about done. I'm going to push us over and then we'll squeeze later, but we want to get the voice of Arab youth. Can you give us some voice in 3 minutes on how Arab youth are getting involved in this vote process and what we can do to help you?
Yeah, so I personally can't speak for every single Arab youth, but the majority of the people that I know are engaged and are trying to vote this election. But I feel like the majority of Arab youth aren't engaged and don't know the information of like, you know, how simple it is, like the last speaker was saying. And like, I think just getting them to understand how easy it is to vote and like, you know, the process of everything would just like help increase the numbers, because, you know, like the majority of Gen Z, I feel like don't really know how to vote compared to like the older generations.
Yep. That's fantastic, Wally. We appreciate you taking the time to come in and join us on this important discussion. We're getting ready to turn it over now back to my co-anchor, Rima, and I want to thank you, young folks. You know, Gen Z and millennials, you all now outnumber us baby boomers. You got the majority, you got the steering wheel. Let's start driving, young folks. God bless you, God keep you, and look forward to working with you some more. See you soon. Rima, you got the con.
Thank you so much, Pastor Simmons. I want to thank also our speakers as well, who are youth speakers. This is an essential voice, I think, in getting out the vote, and we want to make sure that we're able to get everyone in our communities represented and out to vote. So we thank you for being here and for your work and continuing to work with the community to get out the vote. I would like to, before we move on, introduce a special guest, our Access's President and CEO, Hassan Jaber, who is here to welcome our next speakers.
So, thank you so much, Rima, and thank you for everyone. Thank you for doing this. It's such a critical time. You know, it's really not a cliche. It's to say that this is maybe the most critical, most important election in our lifetime. In fact, in the lifetime of this country. What you're doing is so critical to keep pushing for a truly democratic society, a truly representative society. You know, we facing a number of challenges. The pandemic is not the only challenge for us. How to vote in an environment of virus and pandemic is a challenge, but there is also maybe a bigger challenge, that there are these forces, concerted effort to keep minorities, to keep marginalized communities from voting, from being included, from representation, from the right to be represented. And these challenges, let me just say to you that naturalized citizens make up a record of 1 in 10 eligible voters in 2020 election. That's so critical. In the midst of these challenges, how do we create a safe environment, encouraging environment, and to include these new citizens in practicing their rights of voting and be part of this democracy. We are truly lucky that here in Michigan, we have 2 leaders that are exceptional and not only finding ways to protect the rights of everyone, but also find a ways to expand on our concept of inclusion and democracy. we in Michigan, with the leadership of Secretary Jocelyn Benson and Attorney General Dana Nessel, we as vulnerable communities feel supported, feel protected, feel that we have leadership willing to stand up for us and for the rights of marginalized communities. And I am deeply, deeply honored. Thank you for everyone for being part of this effort. Rima, thank you for your leadership. I want to thank our partners in this work. So without any further delay, I want to introduce our Attorney General, Dana Nessel, and our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, go ahead, Attorney.
I was just going to say thank you so much for having us on today and for having this event. We're really excited for it.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Hassan, for coming on to welcome the Attorney General and the Secretary of State. We are so thrilled to have you both here. So I just want to say before we turn it over to the Attorney General and the Secretary of State Benson, these are two women who have proven over and over again that they stand on the side of justice by making voting more accessible to all citizens of Michigan. As we reach just over 30 days before the election, we are grateful to both of these women to take the time to answer crucial questions from our communities. The Attorney General has defended and continues to defend our rights as voters. Here in Michigan, for example, the Attorney General's office recently defended Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's for lawfully sending out unsolicited absentee voter ballot applications to registered voters. The Michigan Court of Appeals affirmed a lower court's ruling that the state law and the Michigan Constitution allow Secretary Benson to distribute applications in the manner that she did. Attorney General Nessel has also stated that all Americans who are eligible deserve to perform their civic duty safely this year as we continue to navigate through the pandemic, which is why the Attorney General and her office are doing everything they can to protect voters and our democracy. Under her leadership, her office is working to ensure all voters, regardless of party affiliation or who they vote for, are informed and have the tools necessary to vote in November. With that, I would like to present Michigan's 54th Attorney General, Dana Nessel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's so critical. It's so important that everyone vote. We always talk about every election as though, this is the most important election of our lifetime. But, I was just saying to my kids that are 17 the other day, I know we say that every 2 years, every 4 years, but this time we really mean it. This really, I will tell you, this absolutely is, for me, at my age, which is older than 29, this is the most important election that I have ever participated in. So with that, I want to talk about some different issues. I'm sorry, are we going into the part where I can get into a multiple? Fantastic. So there are a number of different issues I just think it's so important that everybody be aware of. The most important thing myself and to Secretary Benson, and to all of us at the state of Michigan, is making sure that voters are not disenfranchised and that you are able to vote, you're able to vote safely, and that your vote counts. And what's great about this year is that there are so many different ways to do that. And I know Secretary Benson will get into a lot of those different ways, but because of Proposition 3 in 2018, which you, the voters, helped to pass, there are more ways to vote than there have ever been before. First time that we have no reason absentee ballot voting, which is amazing and of course highly necessary given the fact that we have a global pandemic. We want to make sure everyone feels safe when they vote. And so, we just want to make sure that your votes are counted. Now, there's been a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of misinformation. And what is important for everybody to know and understand is that if you vote properly, your vote really is going to count, but you have to sort of get used to being in a space where we have to tune out the misinformation that is coming to us from all different places, from election interference, both foreign and domestic. It's not going to actually interfere with the counting of the votes. It'll just interfere with people's understanding of how to vote and when to vote. So when we want to clear up some of those misperceptions that have been caused. First of all, I'm working hand in hand with Secretary Benson each and every day, and that's why we're out doing all of these different events to make sure that we are coordinating so that she, as the chief election officer, is doing everything that she needs to do, and I, as the chief law enforcement officer, making sure that I'm supporting her, but also enforcing all of our election laws and making sure that if anybody violates them, that there are consequences for that. So you might have heard, for instance, a little bit about this lawsuit that I filed against the United States Postal Service. And what we saw was an effort by the Postal Service and the new Postmaster General to slow down the mail. And what I believe is that it was politically motivated so that it would make it harder for people's absentee ballots to arrive in time in order to be counted. So myself and many other attorneys general across the United States sued. We got what's known as a preliminary injunction in court, a national preliminary injunction, telling the Postmaster General that all the changes that he had made specifically to slow down the mail would have to be retracted. And so the mail service should be more of what it was previous to those changes being made over the summer. And that is a court order that is now being enforced. But with that, we want you to be very mindful of the timing of when you put your vote in the mail. And what we are recommending is that if you are going to vote by mail, which is a great option, that you have your ballot in the mail by no later than October 19th, if possible. But that being the case, let's talk about a few other types of misinformation that are out there. There were robocalls that were made to residents in the city of Detroit recently with a lot of wrong information, telling people that if they registered to vote absentee, it meant that their personal information would be shared with their creditors, would be shared with law enforcement in case they had any outstanding warrants, would be shared with ICE. Let me tell you this, none of that is true. When you register to vote absentee, it is for the purpose of you receiving an absentee ballot so that you can vote absentee, the end. That's it. Your information can't be shared with anyone for any purpose beyond that. Some other misinformation. The President of the United States has indicated that you should vote twice, maybe. Let me say this, don't vote twice. It is illegal in Michigan. It is illegal in every state in the country. And of course, anyone who tries to do that will be able to catch them. There are many processes in place where we would be able to do that. And unfortunately, we will be prosecuted. So every eligible voter should be able to vote, but only one time. So please don't do that. And remember that if you vote absentee and you want to know, well, what happened to my vote? Don't show up at the polling place on November 3rd to check to see if your vote counted. You can check it online. And all you got to do is go to michigan.gov/vote, and you can actually track your absentee ballot so that you'll know that it has been received by your local clerk. So please don't do that either. Some other misinformation that's been put out there. Some people saying that if you have a felony conviction that you can't vote. In Michigan, that is not at all true. If you have misdemeanor convictions, if you have felony convictions, if you are on parole or probation, doesn't matter. You can still vote. You are a United States citizen like everyone else. Literally, all you have to do is register to vote, like everyone. You don't have to do anything special to get your rights restored. The only people that can't vote are people who are under a sentence currently for a criminal conviction, and they are in jail and prison, or prison. So even if you're in jail awaiting disposition of a case, you actually can still register to vote absentee. But anybody who's out of jail or prison, doesn't matter. You could have 50 felony convictions, doesn't matter. You don't have to do anything special, just register to vote. And again, you can be on probation, or parole. Still doesn't matter. Just register to vote and vote. So another thing that we want to make sure people are wary of are not just claims by people, quite honestly, like the president, that put out misinformation, but anything else that you see on social media platforms, whether you look at Facebook or Twitter or Google or YouTube or what have you. We're working with all of those social media platforms to make sure that they take down any misinformation. But when you see it and it sounds strange to you and something doesn't seem right, remember to check with the Secretary of State's office to confirm whether it's correct or not. Or if you see something that you know is wrong, please report it to misinformation@michigan.gov. That's misinformation@michigan.gov. Just report it. Let us know about it so that we can check into it. The other thing I want to say is this. Some people are concerned, and especially I would say minority communities, naturalized citizen communities, minority communities. People are worried that if they go to the polls, they're going to be harassed, that there'll be people there that are screaming and shouting at them and trying to suppress their vote. Let me assure you of this. My department has been working with every law enforcement agency in the state, and we are going to make sure that if anyone tries to bother you when you vote, tries to stand in your way, is they're acting aggressive, is they're trying to stop you from going in and performing your civic duty, law enforcement is going to be on that right away. And we're going to make sure that there is no one there hassling any potential voters. And all you have to do is contact your local law enforcement or contact us at the Department of Michigan Attorney General, and we will make certain that that does not occur. So that is not a reason to stay away from the polls. Again, you can always vote absentee if you want to avoid even the thought of going to the polls altogether. But if you're a person who likes to vote on election day at the polls, let us know if there are any problems, and we're going to make sure that we take care of any bad actors that are interfering with your right to vote. Very, very important.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. We just need you to slow down a little bit so the interpreters can get everything you're saying. We just want to make sure everyone hears everything you're saying.
I'm sorry, I'm a fast talker and we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So my apologies.
No problem.
Sorry, can you see me? Sorry for going too fast. No, that's slow. Fast, that's right. Okay, all right. Thank you. All right. So those are some of the things that we want everybody to know about. It's so important that everybody's voice be heard, everybody's vote counts. And I have to tell you that, in terms of this election, honestly, this is going to come down very, very potentially to just the state of Michigan. And so every single vote matters. And so what I encourage everybody to do is talk to everybody at your school or at your workplace or in your neighborhood or wherever you contact other people, or even if you're sitting at home, just to call people up that folks that you are friends with on Facebook or you have in your email contact list or in your phone list, and let them know about all of this. And remember, do not be deterred by any of the misinformation that you see. People out there are going to try to make it seem as though your vote doesn't really matter, that your vote doesn't really count, or that the results of the election will not be properly tabulated. None of that is true. None of it is true. It's just people who are saying these things in an effort to discourage you from voting. So don't let yourself be deterred. Don't let yourself be discouraged, and get out there and exercise your right to vote. Nothing could be more important. Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm on mute. That's the new catchphrase for the year. I appreciate everything you're saying, and this is a message that we have been trying to send to communities, that our voices are important, and voting on election day is extremely important. And we want to make sure that people do not fall into the trap of having their voices silenced by believing misinformation. So please do report misinformation if you hear it, and Yes, so thank you again. Our next speaker, Secretary of State Benson, Jocelyn Benson, played a key role in supporting the implementation of our new voter laws, like the same-day registration. I also need to remind myself to slow down, so let me do that. Courts decided that Secretary of State Benson acted within the directives outlined for her office in the Constitution and the state law, and by furnishing the applications, she furthered the purposes of informing qualified registered voters of their right to vote absentee ballot, if they choose to do so. The Secretary could have declined to provide such applications and relied on voters' ability to learn the right to vote absentee on their own. But undoubtedly, there would have been voters who would have been unaware of their constitutional right to vote absentee and who may not have voted. So under the circumstances, the decision which the Secretary of State made, which is to send absentee ballots to each registered voter, is a service to our communities. With that, I would like to thank Secretary of State Benson for ensuring Michiganders know how to vote and turn it over to you. And as a quick reminder, before we do, we want to just ask to speak slowly so the American Sign Language interpreters, as well as we have French, Arabic, and Spanish translators as well. And we will go to question and answer after. Thank you.
Would you like me to start?
Secretary Benson, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me here today. And really, this is such an extraordinary moment in the history of democracy and in the history of our state. And I'm really proud that even in the midst of a pandemic, we are on track to see record turnout in this year's election. And not only that, not only are we anticipating that over 5 or maybe even 5.5 million citizens will participate in Michigan's elections this fall, but we're also seeing a record number of citizens wanting to vote by mail, which is also quite remarkable because, as was mentioned, this is really just the first cycle where we have a right to vote by mail in our state constitution, a right that was put there by all of you, by citizens who demanded that our constitution reflect this right, as well as many others, including the right to be registered to vote up to and on election day. So I wanted to talk through today some of those new rights and what they mean for all of us and what our office is doing to ensure they are equally accessible to all. Now, first, the amendment that was enacted in 2018, amending our state constitution to create these new rights, was enacted by an overwhelming majority of the citizens. And among other things, it eradicated the barrier that voter registration requirements often create for our citizens. In fact, in past elections, you had to be registered to vote 30 days prior to the election. That's like tomorrow. That's when registration would cut off, more or less, this week. But that said, that's now changed. Now you can register to vote up to and on election day at your local clerk's office, which is really, again, extraordinary because it will ensure that no one is blocked from voting. No eligible citizen is blocked from voting simply because of a technicality or a registration issue. But that also means you need to help us make sure citizens know about this change. And notably, getting registered in Michigan has never been easier. In fact, you can register to vote if you have a state ID or driver's license online right now at michigan.gov/vote. You can also check your registration or update your registration there as well, in case you are not sure if you're registered or want to confirm that it's at the right address. So all of that is available to you at michigan.gov/vote. And when you go there, if you register to vote online, you'll be ready to go for November. But notably, that does shut down, that online voter registration option does shut down 2 weeks prior to Election Day. And at that point, the only place where you can register to vote is your clerk's office. So right now until Election Day, you can register at your clerk's office. And up until about October 19th, you can register online or through the paper forms that you can also access at michigan.gov/vote. So in addition to that, once you're registered, then you get to get your ballot, and you have many options for that this year as well. You can get your ballot really one of 3 ways. One is through the mail. You can have your ballot mailed to you, or not just at your home address, but if you are a college student, for example, and living out of your or away from your registration address, you can enter the address where you would like your ballot to be sent, and that ballot will be sent to you. And I was just reviewing the numbers this morning. We've had, as I mentioned, 2.5 million citizens request to have their ballot sent to them this year. And our clerks have been working overtime in every jurisdiction to get them those ballots. It's really quite extraordinary if you compare it to the numbers from 2016. For the city of Detroit, for example, over 100,000, about 110,000 citizens have requested to have their ballot mailed to them. And about 100,000 ballots have already been distributed. And several thousand, by the way, have already been voted in Detroit alone. Similar numbers for Dearborn and other communities around our state. We've seen a 350% increase in ballot requests. So that said, a lot of folks are taking us up on that option, getting their ballot mailed to them. But there's two other ways you can get your ballot as well. And these become particularly important closer to Election Day. Number one, you can get it from your clerk's office. Just go to your clerk's office today, if you'd like, and get your ballot. Fill out the form, you get your ballot right there. And if you want, by the way, you can actually fill it out, vote it, and turn it in right there as well, all in one step. And if you're keeping track, that means you can register, get your ballot, and vote your ballot and return it all in one visit to your clerk's office, which is really an important thing for citizens to know. So that said, you can get your ballot at your clerk's office, return it at your clerk's office, or you can get your ballot at your precinct on Election Day. You have those three choices. And of course, precinct voting will be open, as it always is, on Election Day. And you can find your local precinct at michigan.gov/vote. So that's how you get your ballot. And then returning your ballot also you've never had more options. It's also never been easier. You can return your ballot at your local drop box or at your clerk's office. And as long as it is received by 8 p.m. on Election Day in either your local clerk's office or at your local drop box, it will count. You can also return it through the mail, and we want you to do that if you do choose the mail as soon as possible, but no later than 2 weeks prior to Election Day. And that's particularly important to know if you are, again, living away from your home address, because it would be the address associated with your clerk's office that in your home address, that is where you could go to your clerk's office or your local drop box. So if you're away from home, certainly utilize that mail option, but do it soon because we want to make sure your ballot is received on time. In addition to that, you can also get your ballot again at your local precinct and, of course, return it and vote it right there as well. That traditional method of in-person voting on Election Day remains open and available, as I mentioned. And if you do choose to vote in person at your precinct, you will be met with election workers wearing masks, gloves, and sneeze guards, and they will be equipped with hand sanitizer and many other sanitation options, and voting booths will be socially distant. We want you to wear a mask and encourage you to follow all the protocols that we've got in place to protect your health. But notably, doing that means you don't have to risk your health in order to vote in person on Election Day. You also probably won't see any lines or crowding at the polling places on Election Day because so many citizens are voting early. And that's a good thing too. By giving citizens all of these options to vote, we'll see a spread of citizens throughout every option, meaning each one is equally accessible, safe, and secure, regardless of which you choose. So that's all new this year, but important that you know your options, and really important because we are up against another historic effort in Michigan. Not only is it historic and notable to have all of these options, to have this election infrastructure in place and ready to go for November, even in the midst of a pandemic. But on top of that, we will also see an extraordinary effort. We already are seeing this, to disinform our citizens about all of these truths that I just mentioned. And you may say, well, it's simple. This is just information about how I get my ballot and how I return my ballot and how my ballot is counted. Yes, one would think that. Yet there are forces at play who don't want you and don't want voters to have faith in our elections for various reasons, mostly political and partisan agendas. It enables certain groups' agendas to be furthered if some people feel their voices don't matter and their votes don't count. But the opposite is true in Michigan. Your voices do matter and your votes do count. And so we need your help in ensuring that every citizen knows that they have the information they need to know, and that when they see bad information or false information, or even just something that seems odd, send it to us. Send it to my office at misinformation@michigan.gov. We'll review it, get back to you, and if it contains credible allegations of attempted voter intimidation, we'll pass it on to the Attorney General and her team to investigate and hold folks accountable, because we will not stand for that type of intimidation or voter suppression in our state. On top of that effort to protect against voter suppression, we also need your help in making sure that voters that speak English as a second language have equal access to all of this information and are equally protected from efforts to disinform them about their rights. This week, my office, in the past few weeks, my office has launched a multilingual voter registration and outreach effort led by my Deputy Chief of Staff, Zainab Hussein, who you all know quite well. And through that effort, we're working to ensure that we host town halls and voter information sessions in multiple languages. We hosted our first town hall in Arabic just last week, and we'll be doing more to make sure that that speaking English as a second language or limited English proficiency does not block or deter someone from exercising their right to vote. So we're also grateful for Access and your partnership on that as well. I've worked with Access, now since when I moved to Michigan, one of the first things I did was partner with Access and the Arab American News to research and provide translated election materials for particularly the community in Dearborn. And so I'm really proud now as the Secretary of State of Michigan to be taking those values and applying them at this critical moment in our state's history and in our country's history, where we want to ensure that every vote is counted and every voice is heard, and that citizens have access to translated election materials if they choose to have that in order to participate in our elections. Of course, you also have a right for assistance in election if the voter chooses, and we're here with the Attorney General to work and ensure that you have access to all that information about how to protect your rights against either voter suppression or in light of the many changes this year, so that we can answer questions that you have and assure you that we're meeting you in the community to ensure you have all the access you need to your rights. The last thing I'll mention is that part of this extraordinary year is also recognizing the external attacks that have been levied at our state and other states on the security of our elections. Now, I'm confident that the security of our elections is intact and that Michigan has some of the most secure election infrastructure in the country. We have set up a website, michigan.gov/election security, for you to get more information about everything we are doing to secure your vote and the election infrastructure. We have increased the protections around our qualified voter file to prevent it from hacking. We have implemented statewide post-election audits to ensure that the machines are accurately counting our ballots. And we have hired the state's first director of election security to be on guard and monitor all emerging threats as they occur, so that we're able to rapidly respond to them. All of that to say is, while that information comes into our state, trying to sow seeds of doubt among our electorate about their right and about the security of our elections, we need you to be armed with the correct information, the accurate information about everything that is actually happening to protect and secure your vote and our elections. So you can get that information at michigan.gov/election security. And through that, help us get the word out that elections are secure, regardless of what any candidate for office may try to make you think. And that we are working overtime to ensure we are ready for November, from our clerks to our election administrators to our Secretary of State's office. Finally, this is really the last thing. If any of you are interested in serving as poll workers in your community, we would love to have you. This is particularly important to ensure our election workers reflect the diversity of the communities that they serve. You can go to michigan.gov/democracy-MVP, and we'll get you all of these links. Or you could simply just send an email to me at secretary@michigan.gov and let us know you're interested in serving as an election worker. because we'd love to ensure that every community is fully represented in those who are standing on guard on the front lines on Election Day and beyond, to tabulate ballots and to ensure that when voters vote on Election Day, their rights are protected and their votes are counted. So again, that's michigan.gov/democracymvp to sign up to be an election worker in your community or in any community throughout Michigan. Thank you again for all of the work you've done for decades at Access to ensure every voice is heard. And again, it's just an honor to be here with you today, working in this capacity in partnership with Hassan and all of you to ensure that every community has full access to their rights and their right to vote in our state. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Secretary State Benson. You have both brought up really important dates and points. Before we get into that, I just wanted to mention, if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we'll get those questions asked. We also have a set of questions that we've asked of community members to send us in advance, and we'll be sharing those with you as well. But really quickly, I just want to remind everyone of a few things that you've both mentioned, and we'll probably mention these 3 to 4 times before the conversation is over, just so you all remember the dates. You can register up to the date of Election Day at the clerk's office. And one of the most important things, Jocelyn, Secretary of State Benson, you mentioned is you can go register to vote, you can pick up your ballot, and you can vote all on the same day. Please take advantage of that. That is a really quick way to do it. And you won't have to stand in lines on Election Day. Those are really important things to remember. And remember also that you can have assistance on Election Day if you have if you face voter suppression. We will be dropping the hotlines as well that you can call if you do face any voter suppression. I wanted to check if we have, Jasmine, do we have any questions? And it doesn't look like we do. So Pastor Simmons, I will turn it back over to you. You can start with the questions that we have, and we can go back if anyone from the audience has a question.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to share this stage with the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, Dana Nessel, and the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. And it speaks volumes that in this very, very busy time, that you would take time out to spend time with Access and the very diverse audience it represents. So we want to acknowledge this because we know how valuable your time is right now. And we do have questions from the audience. So let me begin with one that relates to absentee ballots, where there seems to be the most uncertainty. There was a recent decision by Judge Cynthia Stevens that that ballots could be counted beyond Election Day if they were postmarked. And you know what? I'm not going to try and characterize this decision. I'm going to ask you, what was Judge Cynthia Stevens' decision, and how does it apply to the date of ballots and to picking up ballots from others?
So I'll take this one. And I think we had to be really, really careful about how we talk about these cases and how we talk to members of the community about these cases, because it's so important to remember that we did have some recent cases come in. I talked about the one involving the Postal Service. I don't expect that to change. It's very clear that we had rulings in 3 different jurisdictions. So we know that the courts are going to be doing everything they can to ensure that mail will be delivered properly and in a timely manner. However, the other decisions are on appeal right now. So anything we say about those decisions is subject to change. And that's why I want to be really careful about how we talk about them. Now, one thing that I don't expect to change is the ability to give voters a ride to the polls or to their clerk's office or to the drop box. So if you have a voter and they are holding their absentee ballot and they want to go drop it off and they need a ride, it's okay for you to drive them and take them to the clerk's office, to drive them or take them to the drop box to drop it off, or even on Election Day to drive them and take them to the polls so that they can vote. That is not going to change. The other issues that you brought up, Judge Cynthia Stevens in the Court of Claims, she did indicate that for the purpose of just this one election, that what is in the Constitution, which is that our ballots have got to be, our absentee ballots have got to be in the hands of our local clerk by 8 p.m. on November 3rd, Election Day, that as long as your absentee ballots were postmarked by November 2nd, they could be received all the way up until 14 days after the election, they'd still count. But that's on appeal. And the thing is that might hold in some other states where it's gotten to the Supreme Court. That very same principle now has held in other states, but we don't know what's going to happen in Michigan. And so that's why Secretary Benson and I are being very, very cautious about how we talk about those cases. And that's why you'll hear Secretary Benson and you'll hear me say over and over and over again that if you're going to put your absentee ballot in the mail, please don't do it after the 19th or the 20th, if you can help it, of October. If it's after the 19th or 20th, just see if you can go right to your clerk's office and take it to your clerk or take it to the drop box. Because what if there is a change in that ruling later? We don't want to be telling people, oh, it's okay, just get a postmark by November 2nd, and then, oops, maybe, in a week or two that changes. So we're being very careful about that. In terms of whether or not you can even take somebody else's ballot and drop it off.
Let me interrupt you just a second. Yeah. What you're saying is so very important.
Yeah.
Slow down just a bit so the interpreters can make sure everybody gets it.
Very, very sorry. Bad at this. Okay. That's my little bit of sign language. Okay. So what we're going to say this over and over again, and let's just say this. Forget everything about these court cases for a second. Forget everything about them. The only thing that you need to know about these court cases is that, one, if you're going to mail your ballot, that you should mail it no later really than October the 20th. And after that, please try to get to the clerk's office or please try to get to a drop box, just to make sure, to be absolutely sure that your ballot is received in time. And as I said, secondly, anybody can drive you with your ballot, holding your ballot, to the clerk's office, the drop box, or to the polls on election day. And that is fine. But everything else, we're going to just disregard for right now. And I think it's important that we do so because they're not finalized and we just don't want to change any information. So just ignore everything else. If and when we have final rulings, you can bet that Secretary Benson and I will be out there and we'll be screaming from the top of our lungs to let everybody know if the law has changed in any way permanently. But for right now, then these are the best instructions to follow to make sure that your vote absolutely counts.
Nothing like
so if I could just clarify a couple of things. I want to be very clear here. No matter what happens, my office is advising every citizen to, if you choose to vote by mail, return your ballot as soon as possible and no later than 2 weeks prior to election day, period. That's actually not going to change from our office, regardless of anything that occurs. We want your ballots to get in soon. We want your ballots to be counted, and we don't want any pre or post-election litigation to impact that. So if you have your ballot and you choose to receive it and return it by mail, do it as soon as possible and no later than 2 weeks prior to election day. And then know if you get within 2 weeks, within that 2-week window, and as the Attorney General mentioned, you still want to vote early, do so in person at your clerk's office. Don't request your ballot to be mailed to you at that point, and don't after the 2-week window, and don't return it at that point because it's just too close to election day. And we want everyone to have their ballots in on election day. And so that said, everything I talked about earlier in terms of getting your ballots and returning your ballots, the mail-in option really is only in effect for really the next couple of weeks, period, regardless of what may change between now and election day or even after. That's what we want voters to know so that you know your vote will count.
Secretary Benson, can you call your local clerk to come pick up your ballot? What if it's within a couple of weeks and you can't make it to, you don't give a ride and you can't make it to the clerk's office and you can't make it on election day? What can you do in terms of your clerk to make sure they get your absentee ballot?
Good question.
We'll be issuing guidance closer to election day on those matters when you get within that 2-week period. Right now, we want to encourage because, of course, we want people to know their options for returning their ballots and ensure that because you can get to a situation, I know we can talk more about this, Dana, but we get to a situation where 500 people are calling the clerk's office and it's not practical to ask the clerk to visit everyone's home. But we're working through a lot of those details. And the bottom line is we want citizens to know that if you have a ballot, you have those multiple ways of returning it. But even now, utilizing your local drop box in your clerk's office really is a great and secure way to ensure that your ballot is received by 8 p.m. on election day. And then on the other side of it, in terms of getting your ballot, if something happens close to the election, and for example, let's say you have your ballot or even if you've sent in your ballot and you've changed your mind, you have various options to spoil your ballot or request another ballot. So here's another example. Let's say you've requested your ballot be mailed to you. It's now October 25th and you still haven't received it. You can, if you want, go to your clerk's office to pick it up. And whatever ballot you originally requested will be spoiled. And so know that you also have multiple options as you go along, and those will change, and we'll be talking about them in the weeks ahead as they ebb and flow in priority and what we recommend. But right now, as of September 30th, we want citizens to know that you do have this option to vote by mail, and you've got about 2 or 3 weeks left to really exercise it in fullness. And then your options, just like your options to register, start to dwindle. Your options to get and receive your ballot start to dwindle as well. And that's another reason why we're encouraging everyone to make a plan to vote and to vote early.
And just one more thing to add to that. If you are a member of a voter's household or a family member, then you can take their ballot and their completed sealed ballot and take it to drop it off at the clerk or to drop it off at the drop box, as long as you are a family member or you live in their household, or say you're somebody's guardian or conservator. If you have a legal relationship to them like that, then you can also take their sealed ballot and then drop it off to them.
Rima, I think you have the next question from the chat.
We have a question from the audience. Thank you for talking about the diverse poll workers. Who should voters contact when they don't find someone speak their languages at the poll and need help?
We have partnered with the National Voter Protection Organization, and you could call 866-RVOTE to get assistance either prior to Election Day or on Election Day itself. Voters also do have a right to bring in an interpreter with them under federal law, under the Voting Rights Act, and if you'd like that additional assistance. And that's another reason why, frankly, it's helpful to vote at home, because you can get that assistance as well in the privacy of your own home and then return your ballot at your convenience.
So one of the questions we had from earlier from our community was, how are the ballot box locations going to be secured?
Our office has issued guidance to every single community, and I've spoken with the clerks in about 3 dozen of our largest communities to assure that there are security provisions in place, which our guidance requires. The vast majority, if not all, of the ballot drop boxes will be in secure locations under video surveillance and constant video surveillance to ensure their security. Ballots are also picked up every day. So there's no scenario as well where ballots are left overnight. Ballots are picked up, removed every day by staff. And again, we've been in touch with our clerk's office with every clerk's office in large jurisdictions to make sure that they've got the tools and resources needed to protect the security of those drop boxes. So voters should be assured, no matter, again, what you hear or what's out there, that those drop boxes are a secure, in fact, perhaps even more secure means of returning your ballot than doing so at a mailbox because of that video surveillance and because they are picked up every day.
Related to that is a question. There's a rumor that you can purchase additional boxes if you can put up $650. Is there any truth to that rumor?
You mean like a private citizen could? No, no. Citizens cannot just buy a drop box, and they're done officially. There's some. I always try to say what's the kernel of truth in some of that information, and basically the state has purchased drop boxes for various communities, and some local communities have also supplemented that with their own purchases, but they're official drop boxes. And at this point, nearly all of them are installed and ready to go and equally accessible all throughout the state. We've purchased and installed over 1,000 drop boxes in the past few months, and you can find your location of your local drop box at michigan.gov/vote by entering your voter information, and you'll see the full list.
Rima, did you have another question? Okay, so I want to then continue down our list. The first one is considering the backlog of driver's license renewals due to the pandemic, how are you ensuring the people who have yet to register can register if they don't have a valid state ID? I think you answered this in part, but if you could reiterate that, it would be appreciated.
Yes, I mean, our offices have limited availability because of the pandemic, and we can't have a lot of number of people in those branch offices. But fortunately, you don't need an ID or driver's license in order to vote. You can vote by signing an affidavit affirming your identity. And if you are registering to vote for the first time at your clerk's office, just bring in some sort of residential verification, and you'll be able to vote. Or I'm sorry, you'll be able to register to vote and get your ballot and return your ballot. However, all that said, we recognize that citizens are going to be needing more access to IDs and driver's licenses for the first time. So we're in the process of determining how we can either extend hours or add appointments to enable citizens to get those IDs and driver's licenses, because they're needed for lots of different reasons. They're not needed to vote. But certainly, keep tabs on our office, and we'll let you know through Zainab as we make additional changes and as COVID restrictions start to loosen, so that we can provide more access to those in-person services at our branch offices in the days ahead.
So we only have about 10 minutes left, but I have a fun question for you. I think it is, Attorney General. How was the Electoral College involved in electing the president? What should someone say to a person who says they're not going to vote because their vote doesn't count on the Electoral College? And can the Electoral College electors, can they be elected, appointed, assigned, and then once they get there, decide to vote for Mickey Mouse?
Right. No, well, that's against the law. So that has never happened in our state, and hopefully will never happen in our state, right? The electors are there to vote for whoever won the popular vote of the state of Michigan. That's how it works. And so this is something I think that has been distracting people from what the real issue is, which is ensuring that they vote. And we don't want people under any set of circumstances to think that they can vote for one person and that person can get the majority of the votes in Michigan, and then these electors will vote for somebody else. That's not going to happen. And it should not deter you from voting. Now, we do use the Electoral College, of course, and you have to get to 270 to win. But I have to say this, there are some states where people feel like, well, it doesn't really matter because if I vote in my state, because votes are going to, go towards, it's a mostly Democratic state or mostly Republican state. And so it doesn't really matter. Well, I have a few things to say about that. Number one, there's more than just the presidency on the ballot, right? We have United States senators, we have state reps, we have state senator. Well, in 2022, we'll have state senators. We have all these local races that are incredibly important. So there's more to vote on than just the presidency. But here's the thing about the electoral vote as it pertains to the presidency. Michigan has never been more important. And last election we had for the presidency, President Trump, for instance, received just over 10,000 more votes than Hillary Clinton. 10,000 more votes. I mean, that is such a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction by which President Trump won last time. So when you talk about the electoral votes, and in Michigan we have 16, every vote really, really matters because, which presidential candidate ends up winning will in large part be determined by the voters here in the state of Michigan. So if you have ever in your life thought, well, my vote doesn't really matter, you really ought to disabuse yourself of that notion. If you live especially in the state of Michigan in 2020, your vote actually matters more than ever. Your vote will be counted, and your vote will play an essential part in not just who was elected president of the United States, but who was elected for all of these other incredibly essential offices that play such an important role in your everyday life.
We're coming to the close of this section of this teletown hall, And I don't want it to end without again emphasizing how tremendously significant it is that the two of you senior elected officials in the state of Michigan, the senior law enforcement officer and the senior election official for the entire state, took a half an hour out of your extraordinarily busy time to spend with Access and the audience on this teletown hall. As we close, do you have anything to say in 2 or 3 minutes as we close out this section to the folks who have dialed in and listened to the extraordinarily valuable information you have shared with us today? I don't know who ranks where in the, so I'll go in alphabetical order. Secretary Benson.
Well, I want to thank you again for having me here today and hosting this really critical discussion. There really is nothing more important that I could be doing with the 30 minutes or even more of my time today as the state's chief election officer than talking with all of you about your vote and your rights this year. It's really an historic moment in the history of our democracy, and together we will ensure that every vote is counted and every voice is heard in Michigan. I'm fully confident that when we get to Election Day and the days that follow, the ultimate results of our election will absolutely be an accurate reflection of the will of the people. But I'm also confident that there will be forces in play that will try to undermine that truth for so many. And through working together, through spreading trusted information, through going to the source, and that's our website, michigan.gov/SOS, for anything you need to know about voting, that's how we can fight back and ensure that we're spreading accurate information and that we're affirming the sanctity and security of our elections, as opposed to allowing those who would try to undermine those truths to succeed. So our work is significant, but we will be successful. I always say democracy is a team sport. That's why I'm grateful to have the Attorney General working with us to get out this important information and fighting for us to ensure that our vote is protected and that our democracy is guarded. But it will take all of us working together to ensure that trusted information rules the day and that accurate information reflects the accurate results of our elections this fall. Between now and Election Day, make sure you make a plan to vote, make sure you get others to make a plan to vote, and you can email me anytime directly at secretary@michigan.gov. If you have any specific information that you don't see answered on our website that we can get back to you, because you'll be hearing a lot of information in the weeks ahead. You'll be getting a lot of stuff in the mail. You'll be getting a lot of stuff emailed to you, and we're here to help you sift through it, cut out the rhetoric, and just get through the facts and the data about what you need to do to ensure your vote is counted.
And Attorney General Nessel.
Well, just to echo some of the sentiments of Secretary Benson, a famous line from Thomas Paine is that voting is the right upon which every other right depends. And I would say that voting is much like a muscle, you either use it or potentially end up losing that right. So nothing could be more important. And again, to echo some of the words of our Secretary of State, it's so important in this election, much more so than any of our other election in our lifetimes, because we know that all of this misinformation is going to be coming in from so many different places. Just best advice I can give is just to tune it out. And for the truth, when you are wondering what is factual and what is not, go to Secretary Benson, go to the website, go to michigan.gov/vote. It's a one-stop shop. It has all the information that you'll ever need about how to vote, when to vote, how your vote is counted, tracking your ballot, everything. So just tune out the other information, understand that there are forces that are out there that are determined to make sure that you don't vote. And that's why you're hearing all of this stuff, to make you think that we don't have integrity in our elections and that nothing could be further from the truth. And as Secretary Benson has indicated, your vote is safe, it is secure, and ultimately, the person who gets the most votes will be the winner of our elections, period. And anything else that you hear is simply false information. It is untrue. So please don't let anything you hear discourage you. Know that Secretary Benson and myself, law enforcement all across the state, we are working to do everything we can to make sure that the voting process is as easy as possible for everyone. Make sure that you let us know if you have any issues whatsoever. In the meantime, please do everything you can to get out and to vote and to make your voice heard.
Our leaders dropping science on our audience. Rima, you got it.
Thank you so much, Pastor Simmons, and thank you, Attorney General Nessel and Secretary of State Benson, for being here today. We really appreciate your time, and you actually have been here for over an hour, Reverend. They've been here for over an hour, so thank you so much for your time. Before we go, I promised that we would remind you of some deadlines, and we will do that again. We have deadlines to register to vote. October 19th by mail, you can register. Online, October 19th, you can register to vote. In person, you have up to the day of, up to November 3rd. Voting deadlines, application by mail, October 30th. Application early in person is November 2nd. And submission by mail or Dropbox by November 3rd. So please remember those dates. And early voting deadlines begin September 24th and ends November 2nd. We just want to remind you of a couple of things that we've been reminded that people are making these mistakes is when you do your mail-in ballot, please make sure to sign it inside the ballot and the envelope after you seal it. Those are critical, and it will not be counted if you don't do that. Please remember to do that. And again, if you're not immunocompromised and you want to be a poll worker, please consider doing so, especially if you speak another language that may be where we need poll workers. Pastor Simmons, thank you again for co-hosting with us, and thank you all for being here today. And please share this webinar with anyone who you feel may need this information, who works with marginalized communities. We want people to know it's not often we have elected officials who are or people who are listening to us and protecting our vote. And so we want to thank you both for being here. And we will hopefully all see you on voting day and voting online or in person. Thank you all for being here again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, and we are off the air.
Thanks, everyone. Good job. That was incredible.
I think we're still on DPTV. Hold on. Wes, tell us when we're clear. I can't tell.